the dream some fought and died for, in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So
with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great country of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon. Welcome to another edition of Character Matters. And character does matter. Whether we choose to pay attention to it, whether we choose to acknowledge it, whether we are in huge denial about it or not, it matters to everything we do, and it matters to the survival of our great country and to our prosperity as a nation and as a culture. So this is the forum in which we talk about those things, and I invite those who share similar beliefs or who have questions to ask or want to share some experiences to join the conversation at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We are going to have quite a special program this week and next week as well. As I alerted folks on my blog at manipulative-people.com this past Friday during my post, my regular weekly post there, I am going to be talking about abuse in relationships tonight. And I'm going to give a warning right now to all of you politically correct, sensitive folks out there. For all of those of you in the listening audience who are adherents of political correctness, this is a fair warning. This is going to be a non-politically correct show. The things that I'm going to be talking about are valid and important, extremely important, but not always politically correct. I'm warning you right now. So be forewarned if you're one of those folks that's very sensitive to these issues and everything has to be PC, you may take offense. And that's fine. This is an open forum, and you're free to comment. You're free to even take issue with me if you wish at 718-717-8296. But as I announced on my manipulative-people blog this past Friday, today's show is going to be about abuse in relationships. And next week, I'm going to be airing an interview that I did with Barbara Roberts, who is a prime mover in the field of survivor rights and is also very active within the religious community, within the faith community, to stem the tide of abuse in relationships that occurs in the name of religious adherence or religious devotion. So you won't want to miss that. And I'll be talking just a little bit more about that toward the end of the program. So if you want to join the discussion, once again, it's 718-717-8296. You don't have to be telling us about a situation in which you yourself may have endured some abuse in a relationship, or maybe you know of someone who has. You don't have to be sharing anything like that. If you wish, I'm sure that the listening audience will be well served for you to address it. But even if you just have questions or other comments, I invite you to join the conversation once again at 718-717-8296. Well, we had an excellent set of circumstances occur over the last few weeks that really brought attention to one area of abuse in relationships, especially domestic violence. In this Ray and Janae Rice saga that has played out in the media, I resisted on purpose jumping on the media bandwagon. I didn't want to jump right in there and just be sensationalistic about it. It just drives me absolutely crazy that the media, by and large, are sensationalistic in their reporting, and they don't really want to serve the public interest all that much and do their part, not just to investigate and get to the bottom of things so that people can have helpful information, because to an informed public, a knowledgeable public, is an empowered public. The mainstream media has largely failed in that task in the last 20 or 30 years. So I didn't want to just jump on the bandwagon and be part of the sensationalistic crowd talking about this case, but there is so much to be learned, not just about the nature of domestic violence and abuse in relationships in general, but just about our culture, our response to these things, and our general attitudes toward these things that explain so vividly why we have such a huge character crisis in this country. If anything is a testament to why we have such a character crisis in this country, it would be some of the reaction that there was, not just by media figures, to this Ray Rice and Janae Rice tragedy, but also folks who commented on the whole affair. I'm thinking in particular Whoopi Goldberg on The View when this first came out, when the affair first hit the media. Of course, she prefaced her remarks by saying she was not blaming the victim or justifying abuse, but then she went right ahead and made an excuse, or not made a full excuse, but nonetheless provided a rationalization and a partial justification for Mr. Rice's actions. It really just gets under my skin so much. When I was dealing with the most severely disturbed characters, some of them imprisoned, that's my first sign that I was going to get some kind of excuse making or harmful minimization or partial justification. My first tip-off was when they prefaced what they were going to say with, well, I don't want to excuse this behavior, or I don't want to sound like I'm justifying this behavior, or I don't want to sound like I'm blaming the victim, and then launch into a victim blame. But, I mean, just prefacing what they're about to say with that sent up the red flag. Okay, here comes the excuse. Here it comes. And so you can tell just about any time that somebody's going to do this. And in this case, I remember seeing a video of the comment where Whoopi says, well, you know, you just don't spit at somebody. Well, she had her facts wrong anyway about the whole affair. she was under the impression at that time that Mr. Rice had been spat upon, and therefore his cold-cocked left hook to the jaw of his then fiancée, now Mrs. Rice, was at least in part justified. This is absolutely crazy thinking, and it's thinking like this. It's the mass enabling that we do. You know, the title of this program, once again, is Character Matters. Well, at least it matters to some people. If it mattered to enough people, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in. We have irresponsibility all around, from our lawmakers to our citizens, to our elected officials. And if character mattered to us enough that we wouldn't entrust positions of power and authority to people who don't have the character to manage it, and, by the way, if we wouldn't hook up with people who show the red flags for character disturbance, things would get a little better. Over time, they'd get a lot better. Now, I know, I'm the first to say, I wrote a book about it. You can be deceived. You can be deceived about the character of folks. Some folks are really good at putting on the charm offensive. Some folks are really good at coming across one way and then turning out to be the archetypal wolves in sheep's clothing. That's why I wrote my best-selling book, In Sheep's Clothing. That's why I wrote it. So I know that. But you know, we used to have these institutions in place whereby we vetted prospective relationship partners. And we didn't just vet them, our entire extended families vetted them. Why? Because character mattered. Because character mattered enough that you were going to face disapproval and disdain and a lack of support. If you wanted to entertain the notion that you should hook up, especially for a lifetime, for a less than noble reason with a less than noble character. If you were going to hook up just because that person drove your hormones crazy, or just because you thought they were funny, or just because they had money, and you were going to relegate to the sidelines or give second-class consideration, second-class status to the consideration about their character, then you weren't going to get the blessing of your family and friends. It now seems like eons ago, but it wasn't eons ago. So much has changed in just 40 or 50 years. It's unfathomable how much has changed, and not for the good, when it comes to the character health of our country. It's just unbelievable to me sometimes when I stop and think about it. You know, it's staggering enough to think about what's happened within the world of technology and science. Things have advanced so fast. I mean, we went from shellac phonograph records to compact discs to digital files in no time flat. CDs were barely on the market 3 years before they were being phased out. So the rate of change in technology is staggering enough. But when I look at the landscape of our culture and what's changed with regard to our attitudes toward character, it scares the heck out of me. It scares me to my bones. Whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not, whether we choose to deal with it or not, or whether we choose to accept it or not, character does matter. And if we don't wake up to that fact, and we don't all do our part to make it cool again, as my friend Tracy wants to say, then we're in deep doo-doo, as my grandson likes to say. I think we're already in it, frankly. But we'll be in even deeper. So let me just say a few things about this Ray Rice affair. And by the way, once again, if you want to comment, the number is 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. It's 718-717-8296. You have this situation where a video was released a few weeks ago. The first video shows that something has happened in which the then fiancée of Mr. Rice is lying flat on her face as an elevator door opens, and Mr. Rice, nice guy that he is, comes over and sees that she's listless, nudges her a little bit with his leg. She doesn't move. She's out cold. All right. Now, we don't know what's happened. We can conjecture maybe. We can imagine what's happened. We can hypothesize. But we don't know for sure what's happened. But we also do know what's going on with him at this point. And he is not going, oh my God, what's just happened? Oh my, my fiancé is out cold. Is there a doctor in the house? He's not calling for help. He's not frantic. We do know that much. And so when this NFL commissioner says to the media this past week, when a second video is released that shows what happens inside the elevator, the commissioner says, well, we didn't see that part. Now that we've seen that part, we're going to up our sanction. We're going to increase the sanction that we placed on Mr. Rice. Well, I got to tell you, the first video, first of all, I don't believe him. I don't think anybody else does either. And if, this is the great thing, you'll find this in both my books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance. This is the great thing about really accomplished liars and manipulators. They know how to lie by saying true things. That's right. You can lie by saying nothing but the factual truth. All you have to do is leave out a critical bit of information that would cast a whole new light on what you're talking about. And I will tell you right now, that is most likely to be the case with this commissioner. Maybe it is technically true that he did not personally view the the second tape. But is he telling the truth? Well, what if the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, is that after somebody else saw it, they mentioned to him, you don't want to see this. You don't want to see the rest. Best if you don't. Let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see if it leaks. Let's see what the outcry is going to be like. Now, all of a sudden, his assertion takes on an entirely different light, doesn't it? liars know how to lie, even by truth-telling. They just have to leave key things out. That's how they manipulate. It's how it's done. I explain all of this in my books. And it bespeaks character. And, as I say 100 times each show, and I'll keep saying it, character matters. It matters. But, at any rate, he says that he did view the first tape. And there was enough that we already know right then enough about Mr. Rice to know that whatever happened, his response was not the response of a person of decency who cared about the fact that somebody's unconscious, could have suffered a concussion, could have sustained brain damage or a hemorrhage, and could have died. His response was not that kind of response. And brother, if you have to know any more than that, there is something really seriously wrong with you. It's that simple. That's where we've come in this country. It's madness. We have gone so far off-center that we can't tell how far off-center we've gone. We are so lost that we can't tell how lost we are. We are so off course that we no longer realize how far off course we've gotten. This is serious, folks. It's serious. There was already enough information to know that this guy's got really serious issues. Now, is it any surprise that someone with a thuggish character wants to beat up people every week? No. I explain this in my book. Does that mean that everybody playing hard professional sports, tough professional sports, is that way? No, it does not. I will make that point very emphatically. And anybody that's read my works knows that that's not my position. But folks with those kinds of character defects gravitate toward these kinds of enterprises, because it gives them an opportunity to do what they like to do anyway. And it's incumbent upon those who employ these folks to assess more than their raw talents and what they can bring to them in the way of a payday. Yeah, I know what you're going to say. See, here's the politically correct stuff. Well, the league has gotten so competitive, it's all about that. The fans won't support if it's not all about winning. You know, we have let this happen to ourselves. We've let it happen that we can no longer take our kids to the ball game and just have a great time even if we lose, and have the event be about embracing a fun day, having a good time out, seeing an entertaining event, rooting, sometimes winning, sometimes losing, and enjoying the experience and having a good time and building relationships and building memories. No, that's not good enough anymore for us. We've all succumbed to the same temptations. We want, and on top of that, we want to win all the time. We're paying the price. We're all paying the price. We decided character didn't matter, and it's killing us. All of us. Slowly. It will destroy us. Long before ISIS or any other group like that. That's the enemy from without. our character decline is the enemy from within. You've heard it from me emphatically again today. But I want to take apart this case even more than that, because it's so instructive. It is so instructive. Now I'm warning everybody again, there's going to be some politically incorrect stuff coming out here, because I already alerted you to the fact that I took offense when I heard the introductory lines that Whoopi Goldberg was saying about, well, I don't mean to blame the victim, but, and then that fatal but comes in there, and she says, but, you don't want to be spitting on somebody, even though she didn't have her facts straight. So it sounds like she was providing at least a partial justification for Ray Rice's actions. But what I'm going to say here is more specific than that. There is no way that in that encounter that Janae, now Rice, I've forgotten what her maiden name was, but she was his fiancée at the time. There's no way that she was not the victim of a brutal and unnecessary assault. But both of these folks have character issues. Both of them have character issues. And does that mean that in any way, because both parties have character issues, that there's some justification for one party to do something clearly abusive to the other party? No. Does that even justify one party trying through the use of force to put an end to a conflict situation? Let's say the other party is also involved in punching, hitting, spitting, whatever. Does it justify that kind of action? No, never. Why? Because you can always walk away. Why would you want... See, here's the oh my gosh, we keep coming back to the same thing. Why does anybody want to be in a relationship with anybody of such poor character? That's the point. That's the main point. And if we ever get back to that again, if we ever do get back to that, where we actually expect people to be of some kind of upstanding character, and we hold them accountable, and we don't enter into relationships lightly, perhaps, just perhaps, some folks would find some additional incentive to make of themselves decent people, better people. And if they have issues, take care of them. We all have issues. We all have them. We all have them. And if there's no incentive for us to address our issues, they're always going to persist. It's as simple as that. So within hours, after this assault, Miss Rice, now she's Miss Rice, Janae, and I still can't think of her maiden name right now. I'll think of it perhaps before the show is over. But within hours, she's talking about how how things were overblown, how the public scrutiny is hurting them, and how there's more to it than that, and that she loves her man, and it's their issues, and they'll work it out, and blah, 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 blah. And then within 3 weeks, she marries this guy. Now, there are situations, and this could be one. I don't have enough information, so I'm not going to make a judgment. There are situations in which victims of ongoing assault succumb to various syndromes, like the Stockholm syndrome, where they begin to identify with their abusers, and also in which they fear actually cutting loose, because they have this deep gut intuition that they're actually safer in the relationship doing the controller's bidding than they are if they try to end the relationship and the person goes ballistic or does something fatal. That happens in these abusive relationships. I've seen it happen hundreds of times, unfortunately. So we don't know enough about this particular situation to know whether or not any of those dynamics are at work in this situation. We just don't know. But I got to tell you, the stuff that I heard this past week suggests to me very strongly that there are plenty of character issues to go along for these folks, to go around. Both of these folks. And it's not a matter of anger management. You hear that a lot. Anger is not the problem. How it's expressed can be a problem. What's usually at stake in these kinds of situations is not so much anger over an injustice, but rather outrage over a narcissistic insult. By a narcissistic insult, I mean that someone has the audacity to question my greatness. In other words, somebody calls me on something that I've done, catches me doing something, or tries to put me in my place, and I'm not having it. 9 times out of 10, that's what's going on. And it's always about power and control. It's always about asserting who has the dominance in the relationship. Who's got the power and control? Who has the last word? Now, something else goes on in these kinds of things too, and I talk about this. I was the first to introduce this topic in my first book, In Sheep's Clothing, and I named it the slot machine syndrome. I kind of regret using that title right now, that name, that term for the syndrome. But I haven't been able to come up with anything better, actually. But what I talk about there is the fact that many times in troubled relationships, the person with the slightly better character works very, very hard, invests an awful lot trying to make the relationship work. And so when it comes to the point where the other person in the relationship does something so horrendous that it's now clear to them that this is dangerous territory and they ought to consider getting out, one of the problems they have is that they are not faced with just walking away from the bad situation. The problem they face is they have to walk away from their investment. And that feels really awful. And it's analogous to what traps you with a slot machine. That's why I called it the slot machine syndrome. You know, if you've ever been to a casino anywhere, been to Vegas or any of the Native American gaming casinos or Atlantic City, anywhere overseas on one of the gaming boats, and you've played one of these one-armed bandits, you know exactly what I'm talking about. First, there's the lure of a payoff. In other words, you invest, you're going to get something out of it, at least the enjoyment of playing, and the possibility of something even larger. So that's what hooks you in the first place. Very much like some relationships. That's how it starts out. And then what happens is, every now and then, as you feed coins, or as you feed money, or as you spend credits, now we've got credits because everything is electronic. As you invest, every now and then, you get just a little payoff. Just a little, either a cherry or some other kind of payoff that lets you know that maybe the bigger jackpot is just a little bit away. So you get to thinking, well, you know, I've spent a lot of money and I'm not winning, but I just want a little bit. Maybe if I put in just another dime, maybe if I put in just another quarter, another dollar, whatever, maybe if I just keep pitching, I'm going to get the payoff. And then if you are really going to get hooked, you know, and the fates are with you and are ready to actually take your money, what will happen is you'll get several of those little payoffs, and that will really hook you. And then before long, you've spent all your money and you have to walk away empty-handed. But the toughest thing to do is when you're down, and it's pretty clear, you know, that this machine is not out to really help you out. But this machine is there to pay the bills and to pay the staff salaries and to make the owners money. It's not there to help you out. It's not there for your welfare. The hardest thing is to cut your losses and just walk away. That's the hardest thing. Because you've invested. You've invested. You're not just walking away from the machine, you're walking away from the chance to recoup some of your investment that you've already lost. And that's what hooks people in these abusive relationships. That's what I wrote about. And that's what Janae Rice talked about. She talked about their relationship and how long it's been going on. How it started back in their college years. She got a lot of investment there, a lot invested. And so 3 weeks after she could have died, she said, "I do for life." She is, without a doubt, with absolutely no doubt, a victim. Make no mistake. But I will tell you that neither one of these parties is well. It's that simple. Now, does that mean that in any case, in any abuse situation, both parties are sick? No, it does not. Many times, too many times, unfortunately, the victim is just being pragmatic. You know, we had this case a while back, the Ariel Castro case, where he kidnapped 3 young girls to satisfy his lust for that age group, for younger women, and kept them as sex slaves. But as many other similar operators have done before, they threaten all kinds of things. But once it becomes clear that they've thought out their prison strategy sufficiently, made it hard to escape, and once they have put in the face of their victims, their captives, how easy it was and how crafty they were in their abduction and how easy it would be to do it again, and also the threats that they make against family members. You know, so many times severe abusers will tell their captors and their victims, the compliance is the only way that you can keep your family safe. I came after you, didn't I? And I got you. Now you're my prisoner and my slave. And I can go after any one of your family members. Maybe it'll be your mother, your father. Maybe it'll be your whole family, your sister, your brother, your dearest friend. They might threaten to kill him to ensure compliance. And so when the victim complies, are they doing it because they're sick? No. Sometimes they're doing it just because they want to save somebody that they love. They want to save another innocent party from a fate even worse than their own. That's not sickness. This case has so much to teach us. So much to teach us. For me, I can't get past the fact that it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough when somebody revealed the kind of character that they revealed. Nobody had to see that left hook thrown to be outraged. If somebody wasn't going to be outraged at the fact that somebody who was out cold for whatever reason was treated like a piece of dirt afterward, if somebody's not going to be outraged at that level of callousness and lack of empathy and lack of human regard, if somebody is not going to be revolted enough by that, then there's something really wrong with them. It's that simple. You know, this character stuff is not rocket science. The problem for us is not that any of this stuff really is too sophisticated for us to understand. That's not the problem. The problem is we don't care. We decided en masse some time ago that we weren't going to have character matter all that much anymore. That's what we decided, collectively, as a culture. And every decision has its consequences. Every decision has its consequences. And we are living with ours. We have to hold ourselves and one another to greater account than we have been. Because whether we like it or not, whether we admit it or not, whether we choose to deal with it or not, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, character matters. I've got a little bit more to say about this, but I want to once again invite any of you out there who have any comments, either about this case or about related matters, or have something to share, to give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Be happy to take your call, and would appreciate hearing what you have to say. The fact that also we're talking about what to do in response to these things when they happen. Lately it seems to be that when anybody really steps over a big line and finally gets caught and there's enough outrage over it, the immediate sanction in everybody's mind is that the person should lose their job. That's the sanction. They should lose their job. Now, excuse me once again for being politically incorrect. Is that always the appropriate response? Should that be? What is the natural link there? What is the what's the lesson to be learned there? That if you're not upstanding, you should lose your job. That should be your punishment. Frankly, folks, I don't get that. I do think that it matters when we hire folks that we not just hire folks of competency, but of character. And I do think that an employer should reserve the right, in certain cases especially. For example, if I'm running a business, any business, let's say I run a restaurant, and I hire somebody who I shouldn't have hired in the first place, because when I screened this person, I knew that they were hot-headed. But I hired him anyway. And this person never stopped being a hothead and cusses out my customers fairly regularly. Well, my customers are going to quit coming to my restaurant. It's going to cost me money. Not only that, something really bad could happen to one of my customers one time because of this hothead. And then I'm liable, in part. So I get that. I think that there needs to be room for such consequence. But should that be the only consequence, the only sanction? It seems like that's what everybody wants. And the media has been absolutely fixated on this with respect to this Rice case. And one of the reasons why is that this assault, because the way our justice system works, or doesn't work, is a better statement, isn't being pursued like it should be. First-time offense. That doesn't mean, by the way, that doesn't mean it's the first time it's happened. That means it's the first time somebody's been caught. In this case, caught on videotape. Were it not for that tape, especially given the reaction here of the victim, were it not for that, this may never have come to light at all, ever. So there wouldn't have been an offense, and there wouldn't have been a day in court. I'm going to take this call. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Yes, good evening,
Good evening.
Dr. Simon. I know you don't have a lot of time left, but I just wanted to pose this question to you. Perhaps you can address it next week.
Yeah.
We're always talking about these domestic violence situations with women being the victim. And I don't want to put any, not give credence to the fact that women are abused, because they are. I think in her situation, she's more concerned about money than how she's being treated.
Yes.
However, when it's the reverse situation, and it's the man that's being abused, doesn't have to be physical abuse, but it could be emotional abuse or psychological abuse. And what are usually the symptoms of someone like that, or, the victim in that case? You talked about the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. Yes.
How does that play out when those situations are reversed? Because I think that's something that people don't want to give credence to.
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because in my work assessing folks for programs, one of the things I found out is when I looked at the research literature, different profiles emerged for female versus male abusers. Let's be straight about this. There are female abusers. Unfortunately, women are much more frequently the victims. I mean, the statistics are very clear about that. But there are female abusers. But you raise a great question, and I want to make this point very clearly. When I started looking deeper than the research, and I started not accepting information that I was given at face value, and I started looking at the characteristics of female abusers, point for point, character-wise, in every single aspect, they were just the same as the male abusers.
Yes.
Isn't that remarkable? Isn't that remarkable?
It's remarkable, and what fascinates me more is that the syndrome that women have with being abused by men, the men also have.
Yes.
It seems that they kind of isolate themselves, though.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else.
No one will believe them.
Yeah. Let me tell you something else before I forget to mention it. This is an important point in case we have other people listening out there who have tried to seek help before. In the mental health community, when women do the exact same things, show the exact kinds of behaviors, show the exact same kinds of symptoms that men do, they tend to be diagnosed very differently.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. It's crazy. It's crazy the level of bias that's out there.
Yeah.
But it's very true. So your question is a really great one. I'm glad you asked it. It sounded to me, too, like you maybe had a follow-up question in there, too. Did you?
No, just wanted to go. I've called before as regarding the same person, but what baffles me is the situation that I'm seeing in this relationship is that it almost sometimes appears that the husband is helping, is what's the word?
Enabling?
Yeah, enabling, yes. Enabling
Yeah.
the situation to just keep going. And so sometimes you don't realize, you wonder, are you really being abused? I know other people are being abused around you
Yeah.
by the same person.
Yeah.
So it must be happening, it must be happening there too, but why do you allow, the situation? What is it? Is it in your character, or is it just that you've been so victimized that you just are paralyzed as to what your next step could be, or in fact that maybe you have reached out and tried to get help and no one would believe
Well, that
it's
situation,
possible.
that syndrome that I described several moments ago about the slot machine syndrome, that syndrome is just as valid for men as it is for women, too. Men invest in relationships, too. They invest in their
Absolutely.
kids, and they invest time, energy, and money. They have just as much at stake to walk away as well.
Right, and it's those that are trying to exhibit an opposite character of Ray Rice, and not abusing, or not retaliating.
Yes.
The abuser, that just makes them even more abused.
Yes.
Because they are trying to exhibit a character that would not be retaliatory.
Well,
and I'm baffled, by that. I was just wondering if you've ever covered that, with a female, particularly predatory in nature.
Well, yes. Oh my goodness. And here's
and then the borderline too. Your articles were great.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you very much.
More.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of emails on the borderline articles. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But yes, you raise a very good point. It's. I think we have a hard time just generally accepting that there can be female predators.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. We just don't naturally tend to think that there could be such people. We don't want to believe it.
Right. We don't.
And we especially don't want to believe that they have the exact same characteristics as their male counterparts. That's counterintuitive as well. But they do. And unfortunately, because of aspects of our culture, we are seeing an increase in the numbers of these more seriously disturbed female characters. As a matter of fact, that one video that went viral on YouTube a while back with the girls that had been constantly attacking at their school, they were vicious, and they were true predators. They were doing the initiating of this time and time again. It was very interesting. Well, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for your question. You've given me food for thought about some things I need to cover in a future edition of the show. And I do want to mention again that next week we're going to be talking about abuse that hides under the cover of religious adherence. You won't want to miss it.
I won't.
And Barbara Roberts is a great advocate. She's got a lot of wonderful things to say about the topic, so I hope you'll tune in. Thanks so much again for your comment. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, you were getting close to the end of the program here tonight. I just want to, we'll probably have to cover this again at some future point, and the caller was right to point out that this is not a male-only problem, even though males are the more frequent abusers. Character disturbance is growing among women, and severe character disturbance is growing among women as well. And when you look very closely past all the stereotypes, women who display these behaviors are in every way like their male counterparts. So we'll be talking about that at some future program. But I want to alert you once again to next week's program where Barbara Roberts will be the guest. She operates as the co-operator of the Cry for Justice blog. This is a blog dedicated to stemming the tide of abuse perpetrated in the name of religious belief or religious adherence or religious fanaticism, or using the Bible and using other holy books to justify ruling the roost with an iron fist and engaging in all kinds of emotional and verbal and even physical abuse. So you won't want to miss it. So until next week, remember, whether we like to admit it or not, character matters, and we'll be talking.
You wonder what's